Hello students, once again I welcome you all. Presently we are dealing with a short story titled as An Astrologer's Day, written by R.K. Narayan. In the previous class I could complete general introduction to the story, introduction to the author, and similarly I completed the first paragraph from the text of the story. Now we have a general idea about the central character of the story, that is a man who is portrayed here in the story as an astrologer. There are a few things that we come to know about this man. One, his profession, that is, he is working as an astrologer in the town. Second, he is very punctual as far as his work is concerned. Right at midday every day, he opens his bag, spread out his professional equipment under a tamarind tree. So far the professional equipments are concerned, he has a dozen cowrie shells, a square piece of cloth, some bundle having Palmyra writing, and his posture is also described by the author here. One, his forehead was resplendent with sacred ash and vermilion, and his eyes sparkled with a sharp abnormal gleam, which was really an outcome of a continual searching look for his customers. So these are the things that we come to know about this character. In addition, I can say that in the course of time, the astrologer has learned how to read the faces of his clients, because generally the clients or the customers approach him related to the issues regarding the financial problems, family problems, or marital problems, or some other personal issues sometimes. So based on the inputs that he get from his customer, he used to give his opinion, and most of the times he is successful in convincing his customers. So these are the things that we learned in the previous class, and now I would like to continue with the subsequent paragraph from the text of the story. To crown the effect, he wound a saffron-colored turban around his head. This color scheme never failed. People were attracted to him as bees are attracted to cosmos or dahlia stars. He sat under the boughs of a spreading tamarind tree, which flanked a path running through the town hall park. It was a remarkable place in many ways. Now you see here, few more things are being described by the author as far as his portrayal is concerned. This man who is working as an astrologer in the town is generally winding a saffron color turban around his head, and that definitely gives him a different look. And this color scheme, as it is pointed out by the author, never fails, especially in India. People get attracted towards him just like the honeybees are getting attracted towards the nectar of a flower. And this man, that is the astrologer, usually sits under the boughs of a spreading tamarind tree, and the street where this particular tree is located is a very crowded street that is leading to the town hall park. So according to the author, it was a remarkable place in many ways. A surging crowd was always moving up and down this narrow road, morning till night. A variety of trades and occupations was represented all along its way. Medicine sellers, sellers of stolen hardware and junk, magicians, and above all, an auctioneer of cheap cloth who created enough din all day to attract the whole town. Now, in the second part of this paragraph, the author has described the location where this man is working as an astrologer. As I just before said, the tamarind tree is located in one of the streets there, that is a path running through the town hall park. That is usually a very crowded place. A surging crowd was always seen over there right from the morning till night. And there are a variety of traders, those who have, occupied certain place over there and do their business. There are medicine sellers, sellers of the stolen hardware and junk, magician shops, and above all, there is an auctioneer of cheap cloth also, who created enough din all day by attracting the people of the town. Next to him is vociferousness came a vendor of fried groundnut, who gave his ware a fancy name each day, calling it Bombay ice cream one day, and on the next, Delhi almonds, and on the third, Raja's delicacy, and so on and so forth. And people flocked to him. A considerable portion of this crowd dallied before the astrologer too. Now you see here, one more thing we came to know about this astrologer and the location where he is doing his business. You have a vendor who is actually selling groundnuts, fried groundnuts. But this man, that is the groundnut vendor, uses a trick of his business. And every day he gives a fancy name to his groundnuts. One day he calls it Bombay ice cream. The next day he calls it Delhi almonds. The third day he calls it Raja's delicacy, and so on and so forth. So it is continued. And this particular groundnut vendor is very much in demand, and whenever he is found over there, the people of the town flow to him usually. And one more important aspect in this respect is a considerable portion of this crowd who is, around the groundnut vendor is also dallied before the astrologer. And of course, the astrologer is also doing a good business. The astrologer transacted his business by the night, and a flare which crackled and smoked up above the groundnut heap nearby. Half the enchantment of the place was due to the fact that it did not have the benefit of municipal lighting. The place was lit up by shop lights. One or two had hissing gas lights. Some had naked flares struck on the poles. Some were lit up by old cycle lamps, and one or two, like the astrologers, managed without lights of their own. It was a bewildering crisscross of light rays and moving shadows. See the kind of description given by the author. As I said, there was a considerable portion of the crowd who is flocked around the groundnut vendor, and some of them also moved towards the astrologer. Actually, especially in the evening, when all these people are doing their business on the roadside, actually they were facing some problem also. As the town municipal corporation or the municipality did not provide any kind of street light system over there. Most of the shop owners, those who have their settled business over there, they manage their own lighting system. Okay, so one or two had the hissing gas lights, some had flares struck on poles, some were lit up by the old cycle lamps. One or two, like the astrologer, managed without any lighting system. In fact, they were just using the kind of lights which are being used by or provided by the other shop owners. Actually, it was a bewildering crisscross of light rays and moving shadows. This suited the astrologer very well for the simple reason that he had not the least intention to be an astrologer, and he began life. And he knew no more of what was going to happen to himself next minute. Now you see here, the author has provided an interesting information about the astrologer to us all. This bewildering crisscross situation was really helping out the astrologer. Why so? There was a simple reason that the astrologer or the man had no intention of being an astrologer. But maybe in the course of time or because of the situational influence, he might have become so. As a matter of fact, even though he is working as an astrologer, he himself does not know what is going to happen with him the next moment. So he was as much a stranger to the stars as were his innocent customers. See now, this man is working as an astrologer and talking about the future of the people around. The fact is, he himself does not know about his own future and about the situation, what is really going to happen in his life the next moment. As far as the knowledge of stars is concerned, the author describes him that the astrologer was as much a stranger to the stars as his innocent customers were. It means he did not know even ABC of stars and the kind of the influence that the stars have on the people. Yet, he said things which pleased and astonished everyone. That was more a matter of study, practice, and shrewd guesswork. All the same, it was as much an honest man's labor as any other, and he deserved the wages he carried home at the end of a day. So the kind of business that he is doing it very tactfully. In fact, he does not know anything about the stars, anything about the horoscope, anything about the palmistry, still doing the business of this kind. The way he is handling and treating his customers is very, tactful and skillful, I would say. He usually tells his customers the things which generally please them and astonish them. In the course of study, in the course of practice, he has become a shrewd person, and he could really do some guesswork, and based on that, he used to convince his customers. But whatever it may be, whatever business he does till the end of the day, and he earns certain wages, and that he carries to his home at the end of the day. And of course, all that is the same as it was, as much an honest man's labor as any other. And of course, he also deserves the same. He had left his village without previous thought or plan. If he had continued there, he would have carried on the work of his forefathers, namely tilling the land, living, marrying, and ripening in his cornfield and ancestral home. But that was not to be. He had to leave home without telling anyone, and he could not rest till he left it behind a couple of 100 miles. To a villager, it was a great deal, as if an ocean flowed between. Now, we come across the fact related to the life of this man, as the author has described in nutshell in this paragraph. In fact, the situation forced the man to leave his native place. He had left his village without informing to anybody. He did not inform to his parents, his relatives, his villagers, friends, and so on. He left the village without having any thought or plans, and if at all he would have continued to live there in his native place, probably he would have done the ancestral business of tilling the land, as his forefathers have been working in the fields for generations together. Just like them, he would have continued tilling the land, he would have continued living over there in the village, he would have got married and had children, and he would have continued to ride the cornfields and would continue to live in the ancestral home. But probably his destiny decided something else for him, and he could not continue to be there in the village. Finally, he left the village, and he did not rest till he went away from his native place for a couple of 100 miles. And finally, he reached to a place where he is working as an astrologer today. In fact, for a humble villager like this, it's really a great deal. It is as if an ocean flowed between. He had a working analysis of mankind's troubles, marriage, money, and the tangles of human ties. Long practice had sharpened his perception. Within 5 minutes, he understood what was wrong. He charged 3 paise per question, never opened his mouth till the other had spoken for at least 10 minutes, which provided him enough stuff for a dozen answers and advices. when he told the person before him, gazing at his palm, in many ways, you are not getting the fullest results for your efforts. 9 out of 10 were disposed to agree with him. See now, this man, that is our astrologer, has really improved his understanding of the people. As I said, he had a working analysis of mankind's troubles, issues related to marriage and after marriage, money problem, and the tangles of human ties. Whenever a customer is going to approach the astrologer, he could really treat the person very nicely and successfully. And that is all possible because of the long practice that he had, and in the course of time, he had sharpened his perception of the people. For the first 5 minutes, he will understand the basic problem of the individual and he will have his own convictions about it. As I said earlier also, the astrologer is very professional. He charges 3 paise per question. And he never opened his mouth till the customer speaks for at least 10 minutes. And whatever the customer speaks in the span of 10 minutes, these inputs are sufficient for the astrologer to answer a dozen questions and give advice to the customer. So this is how he is doing it very tactfully. And this business tactic he has improved in the course of time. He will gaze at the palm of the customer, and sometimes he will tell him that the customer is doing all necessary efforts, but unfortunately the customer is not getting the expected returns. And he will also say very confidently that the 9 out of 10 were disposed, and of course the customer also agrees with you. Sometimes the astrologer will question the customer whether there is any woman in his family or a distant relative who is not well disposed towards him, or he will also give a kind of analysis of the character, that all these troubles the customer is facing because of his own nature and disposition. And most of the times he will also try to say that the location of the Saturn in the horoscope is not so favorable, and that's why the person is facing, or the customer is facing, problems. So this is how this astrologer is successfully convincing his customers, and this endeared him to their hearts immediately, for even the mildest of us loves to think that he has a forbidding exterior. So in the professional point of view, this man, that is our astrologer, has really learned the necessary skills to be an astrologer. As I said before, that he never wanted to be an astrologer. But probably you know very well that the human beings are the victims of situations around. And probably this astrologer is also one of them. The nuts vendor blew out his flare and rose to go home. This was a signal for the astrologer to bundle up too, since it left him in darkness except for a little shaft of green light which strayed in from somewhere and touched the ground before him. See now, he has his own time management. Right in the beginning I told, and he is a very punctual fellow. So there is a signal that he gets in the evening before going home. The nuts vendor blew out his flare and rose to go home. And every day, that is a signal for the astrologer to wind up his business for the day. In fact, it is, darkness around. There is just a little shaft of green light which strayed in from somewhere and touched the ground before him. So eventually, he picks up all his cowrie shells, paraphernalia, and was putting them back into his bag when the green shaft of light was blotted out. He looked up and saw a man before him. See, this is all happening in the evening. The groundnut seller has already left the place. He is the lonely person over there sitting under the tamarind tree, actually winding up the business for the day, putting all his professional equipments into the bag. But suddenly what happened? An individual, a man, came before him, and he sensed a possible client and said, "You look to cavern." See now, the moment he saw a man standing right in front of him, he realized that the man is no one but a possible client. And then the astrologer says, "You look so careworn. It will do you good to sit down for a while and chat with me." The other grumbled some reply vaguely. The astrologer pressed his invitation, whereupon the other thrust his palm under his nose, saying, "You call yourself an astrologer?" The astrologer felt challenged and said, tilting the other's palm towards the green shaft of light, Your is a nature." "Oh, stop that," the other said. "Tell me something worthwhile." See now, this dialogue between the astrologer and the stranger is one of the very significant development of the story. As soon as the astrologer looked at the man and he realized that the man is a possible client, and immediately the astrologer told him that he looked like, or he's so careworn, and of course he was inviting him to sit down so that the astrologer could study his palm, could study his horoscope and say a few things about his problem and could give him a couple of advice. But the man was a little bit stubborn. He was not really willing to show his palm to the astrologer, and very bluntly the man said that, the astrologer call himself as an astrologer? In fact, this kind of wording, as I would like to quote from the text, you call yourself an astrologer. So these words, felt this particular astrologer as a challenge. And then he said, tilting the other's palm towards the green shaft light, the astrologer says, yours is a nature, right? So I don't know, why are you not so comfortable to show your palm and let me see what sort of problem is there? Then, oh, stop that. The other said, that is the customer says, or the client or possible client says, oh, stop that. Don't tell me all that nonsense. Tell me something worthwhile. Because the possible client wanted the astrologer to tell him something comprehensive. He was not ready to listen anything that the astrologer was trying to tell him. And now we have come to such a juncture in this particular story that is giving a turning point to the entire development of the story. And of course, here I would like to put a pause. And of course, in the next class, I will continue with the leftover part of the story. Here, you will come across a dialogue between the possible client and our astrologer, and the kind of dialogue that is also leading to the climax and the end of the story as well. So I'm sure that you will definitely enjoy this story. So thank you very much.